Welcome, everyone, to the Good Leadership Podcast. My name is Charles Good, your host and the president of the Institute for Management Studies. This podcast is designed to provide you with actionable insights and strategies that you can apply from discussing the research of esteemed leadership experts and practitioners to take your leadership to the next level. My goal is that what we discuss will be immediately actionable and useful to you, and I'd love to hear your comments from this episode on what you're planning on implementing. Today, I'm joined by Paul McGee, which is one of UK's leading speakers on the subject of change, workplace relationships, and motivation. His provocatively titled book, SUMO, Shut Up and Move On, became an instant bestseller, and his book on self-confidence reached #1 on the business book charts and remained there for 24 weeks. Building on his background in psychology, Paul's aim is to deliver a practical, relevant message that can be immediately impactful on people's professional and personal lives. His approach is considered both inspirational and humorous as he seeks to deliver memorable experiences that equip people with insights and ideas to increase their personal effectiveness and impact. Thank you once again for joining me today, Paul.
Absolute pleasure, Charles. Greetings from a grey and wet northwest of England. It's a typical summer's day. The only thing that's different between the winter and the summer in where I live is that the rain is a bit warmer in the summer. That's about it.
That's that's great to know. So in this episode, I'd love to unpack some of your great insights in your book on how to live a great life. I think this message is needed today now more than ever. And it's packed, your book is, with so many impactful stories, insights, tips that leaders and everyone should listen to and needs to hear again, even if they've heard it before. So I'd love to start off with just kind of you giving some background. Why did you write this book? And I assume you feel that this message is probably more important now as much as it has been in the past, right?
100%. I mean, one of the things that I got some feedback from a client who said to me recently, one of the things that makes you different as a speaker when you work with us is my staff tell me they get as much benefit in relation to their personal life as they do from their work life. And it was an obvious statement, but it really kind of crystallized it in my own mind and I do my IMS seminars, but I'm always giving them a slant on how this can impact you in your personal life as well. I'm very much a holistic communicator. But what I was also keen to do is a lot of people sometimes also say to me, have you got this on Audible? I don't read books. And part of what I wanted to do was to write a book, and it's got the subtitle is 35 Surprisingly Simple Ways to Success, Fulfillment, and Happiness. Each chapter is a standalone chapter. And so if you had your book in your case and you're in a reception area and they go, I'm really sorry, but so-and-so's meeting is overrunning by about 20 minutes. Can I get you a coffee? Well, yeah, you grab me a coffee and I'll grab myself this book, because you could read 2 or 3 chapters in that time. And I actually encourage people when they're reading the book, probably read 3 chapters at a time at the most, and then put the back of the book to one side. So I almost wrote the book for people who don't read books, who want some bite-sized wisdom, but stuff that's significant and really gives them stuff to chew on, rather than just simply a nice little motivational quote. So that was the reason behind the book.
From reading the book, I agree with you. And even though you say they're simple, they're impactful. There's a lot of meat and substance behind them. And in some cases, it takes time to really digest it and integrate it within your life. So with that, let's jump into the first one that I love. I love the quote by Einstein. It's one of my favorite quotes, that there are 2 ways to live your life. One is through though nothing is a miracle. The other is though everything is a miracle. I would advocate for that latter approach. Having that mindset where everything's a miracle makes you more grateful, makes you more to where you're going to just, suck the marrow out of life, as they say in Dead Poet Society and some of the other quotes, so that you really enjoy and extract all the meaning you can, because we're here for a very short period of time.
I mean, we are. And I think, but what can happen, Charles, is that we can live life on autopilot with a sense of entitlement. And what I'm trying to say is live life more intentionally with a sense of awe. And I always feel a bit emotional discussing it because we talk now a lot about mindfulness, but I'm I am a person who I suppose has been talking about mindfulness for many years. Shut up, move on. But the shut up bit is take time out, stop, think, reflect, press pause. And we have an alternative definition for sumo, which is stop, understand, move on. But whether you're shutting up or you're stopping and understanding, there is this sense of just let's press pause for a moment because life is just flipping amazing. The fact that we are able to conduct this conversation now with the power of technology, the fact that I can see my wife grows vegetables and she puts this little seed in the ground, and I'm still in awe of the massive zucchinis that grow and one thing and another. And I'm like, when you're a child, everything's amazing. And if you're not careful when you're an adult, you just become cynical about life. And it's a gift. It really is a gift. The researchers suggest that Homo sapiens have been on this planet for around 200,000 years. And in those 200,000 years, 100 billion people have walked this planet, 100 billion Homo sapiens. And there's about 7.7 billion of those people around now. And you and I are one of them. And even though we think life is really tough now, and I get it is for people, Charles, I don't think there's ever been a better time to be alive with all the good things that happen. And one of the things I put in that book was actually a quote, if you don't mind if I read it out, which is from the Jewish philosopher and theologian Abraham Heschel. And he just said this: our goal should be to live life in radical amazement. Get up in the morning and look at the world in a way that takes nothing for granted. Everything is phenomenal. Everything is incredible. Never treat life casually. To be spiritual is to be amazed. And then I add up to that something I've come across. You might not be aware of it, but most of us have encountered the seven wonders of the world. Really, we have. Those seven wonders are to see, to hear, to touch, to taste, to feel, to laugh, to love. And that is how I am choosing to live my life, with more of a sense of awe and appreciation. And as you say, gratitude. And when we think about the mental health crisis that we talk about around the world, but particularly in the Western world, then one of the things that, science is saying is it is healthy to practice gratitude, to appreciate what you have rather than keep chasing what you don't have. And I think this is more powerful than perhaps people realize. It's easy just to think it's a nice, cheesy little cliched approach to life. It is far deeper and more profound than that. It really is. Don't take miracles for granted.
I agree with you completely. That brings to mind a quote that I heard a long time ago, that if we magnified our blessings as much as we magnified our problems, we'd be a lot happier and have a lot less to worry about. So, like you said, it does sound cliche. Yes, it's somewhat cheesy, but if you can live a more deliberate, intentional life, the quality, the value of your life is going to be so much richer for that as well. And it's just making that decision, right? Every day to be less on autopilot, to find something to appreciate, to recognize, to enjoy, because it's the process, it's the journey that you have to enjoy. Don't get trapped in that great Western disease that one of the other authors told me about, that I'll be happy when, because there's always something that's going to be an issue. There's always going to be a problem out there. And you end up living your life with that future mindset, I'll be happy when, and then you don't end up enjoying your life as a result.
We can get up in a phrase I came across, you can get up in too much time travel. You're either thinking about the past or thinking too much about the future, but you're not experiencing and enjoying the present. And we can learn from the past and we can plan for the future, but let's live for today. And I think I have to challenge myself, Charles, because I love the sunshine. I've just been on holiday in Malta and I come back to the UK, which did actually have surprisingly, incredibly high temperatures last week whilst I was away. And now it's grey, but and wet. And I'm like going, feel the rain on your face. Realize I have a friend, Mark. He's basically going blind. And I'm thinking, I get to see things Mark will never see. And I get to see that flower coming out. I get to, see my cat the way it's just curled up on the couch, not caring the world. And I'm thinking, Mark's still got plenty of good things in his life, but I'm grateful I have the eyes to see. I'm on a walk in the morning. I'm listening to a podcast, as your listeners are, or your viewers now. And I'm thinking, I'm grateful I've got this. I'm living in an age where we've got the technology to experience that. It's powerful. And I think sometimes we sometimes overlook the simple and realize actually the simple is also very profound.
And we take it for granted, right? And one of your other simple ways is to have more appreciation, to be more deliberate, is to read your own obituary. And if you could unpack that a little bit for us, and a great story you have about Alfred Nobel in regards to that.
Yeah, well, it's a fascinating story. And in fact, when I was writing the book, a friend and his wife came over for dinner and he just said, I've come across this amazing story about Alfred Nobel. And he told it me. And I went, Graham, just to let you know, that is going to go in the book. And I researched it. And in a nutshell, Alfred Nobel, who was around in like the 19th century, he's now known for the Nobel Peace Prize, the Prize for Literature, for Economics. But actually, before any of that was set up, Alfred Nobel was perhaps best known for being the inventor of dynamite. And him and his family business was basically making armaments and selling them around the world. Now, a rather bizarre thing happened. His brother, Ludwig, died. But the press got hold of the wrong end of the story and they thought Alfred had died. So the next morning, Alfred wakes up, obviously in shock that his brother's died, opens the newspaper up, and he doesn't read about the death of his brother. He reads about his own death. And the headline, imagine this, your life summed up in 6 words. And the words to sum up Alfred Nobel's life were, the merchant of death is dead. And it was a kind of, I suppose, a Christmas Carol Scrooge experience for him. And he had no family, no children, wasn't married. But it was like, I don't want to be remembered for that. I want to be remembered for something else. And so he bequeathed all his money, and he was a wealthy man, to set up this in a foundation, these prizes. And now most people haven't got a clue that Alfred Nobel was actually the inventor of dynamite and was involved in, manufacturing armaments. And I think sometimes, I'm nearly 58 and I'm thinking, well, hopefully I want to live a lifestyle that hopefully improves my chances of living long and living well. But at some stage, we're all going to leave this planet. And I don't think most people are going to say at my funeral, can I just say, Paul McGee, who always remained, quite slim, Paul McGee, who, was a best-selling author, Paul McGee. No, I think they're going to talk about Paul McGee, the person. And I want my kids, my father just passed away. And I read his eulogy, and I want my kids to have plenty to say about me at the eulogy. And I want people to be genuinely upset because they were glad I lived and I made a little bit of an impact. Not, oh, Paul McGee made a lot of money and he had a big house and you should have seen the car he drove. And, more about who I am, I think is really crucial. And I think I do, Stephen Covey in the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, one of his habits, that wasn't completely relating it to this, but one of his habits, number 2, is begin with the end in mind. And I'm thinking, what do I want to be remembered for? And I want to be remembered for how I lived and how I was with my friends. And I don't want to be remembered for, well, he gave us a nice house, but we never saw him. And when we did see him, he was totally stressed. And I have to say, Charles, a few years ago, that would have been my legacy. And I needed to wake up and decide I need to create a different future.
That is great. And that's a way to bring the future to the present. Think with the end in mind. It might sound a little morbid, but if you create your own obituary of what you would like it to say, then you can start being that type of person that's going to have that obituary when it is time, so that you're really valuing the right things and not putting all the focus on the wrong things or on the wrong ladders of success. You don't want to be climbing up the wrong building, because when it's all said and done at the end, it's usually too late to make that change. The sooner people realize that, the better. And one of the things that will help them to realize that too, because people's inner critic is usually the harshest. You are harder on yourself than usually anyone else is. So it's really making leaders, making everyone feel and understand that if you want to improve yourself, if you want to be that type of person when you die, you need to be more self-compassionate, have more self-acceptance, and not so much self-loathing. Because we all have flaws, we all have failings. Maybe you're not setting yourself up to the way you want to be, or you have this idea of perfection, but it's giving yourself a break every once in a while and realizing you're doing the best job you can right now. Hopefully you have that mindset and moving forward based on that. So you're not beating yourself up, right?
I mean, it says a phrase I use in the book, How to Have a Great Life: make peace with paradox. And also remember you're okay. What I mean by make peace with paradox is that ability to hold what seems to be two contrary opinions or ideas, but you hold them together as having equal value. So what do I mean by that? I mean, in relation to I'm okay, I am okay. But here's what the problem is. People make money out of our unhappiness. And they make money out of our unhappiness by basically saying, you're okay if you look a certain way, you earn a certain amount of money, you drive a certain car, you wear a certain perfume, you hang around with certain people. You're okay if. And what I'm trying to say is, I'm okay and, which means I am okay and I accept myself and I still want to improve. But it's not done out of, as you say, self-loathing, and it's not, I need myself, I need to change. It's like, I accept myself, I'm okay. And there are areas of my life I do want to pay attention to because I think I can improve. So my acceptance isn't conditional on being a certain weight, selling a certain amount of books, speaking at a certain amount of conferences. It's, I'm okay and I want to get better. And I think but for a lot of people, this constant inner critic of wanting to be a perfect and accepted by everybody, and I've learned this as well. I am a recovering people pleaser. I thought it was my job to make everyone happy and everyone like me. And I've realized they won't. And that's okay. That is really okay. And I'm okay. And going back to the legacy and what people say your obituary, I think when I get, called out online or someone hates my book and says so on Amazon on a review, but it's a case of, what does your wife say about you, Paul? What do your kids think about you? What does your brother say about you? What does your mum say about you? What would your dad have said about you? What does your daughter-in-law say about you? And then hopefully in the future, what are your grandkids going to say about you? Because that is more important than when some random stranger who I don't know, never come across. What is it? I'm not quite sure of the quote, but it's something like, why listen to someone's opinion of you who you'd never ask them for advice? You'd never ask this person for advice, so why'd you listen to their opinion of you? And so we're okay, and we might want to still improve.
I love that rephrasing. And I would completely agree with you that one of the surest ways to unhappiness is try to be a people pleaser and please everyone, because you will never please everyone all the time. As you become more notable, as you become more recognized, you are sure to have those critics. And you have to, like what you said, you have to really value those opinions of the people that know you the best versus trying to please everyone. And when you do that, that's really the first step, I believe, in self-improvement. Because if you can't accept yourself, if you can't give yourself a break and love yourself, you can't pour from an empty hand. So you got to remember that you got to put your oxygen mask on first while you're trying to help other people. Because if you're just making the needs of everyone else a higher priority than your own and making your own self-care an afterthought, then you aren't going to be able to help too many people, because self-care is not selfish. It's rather a key to your success and your sanity, right?
100%. And do you know what's really interesting, Charles? Is I had a briefing call earlier on with the CEO of actually an education trust. So it's a group of schools, and he's the CEO of it. And our schools are broken up now, but he's the CEO and he's still got lots of stuff to do. And he wants me to speak at a conference in October about well-being and resilience, and the staff are going to look after themselves. And I just said to him, I said, so John, what are your plans for the summer? And he went, oh, well, I've still got a lot of work to do and I've got some DIY jobs. And I went, John, I hope you're looking after yourself as well, because you always speak about the well-being of your staff, but you're the CEO, your shadow, you cast a large shadow, you influence a lot of people. You're the thermostat, your mood, your energy, your attitude sets the temperature for those around you. I said, and he went, yeah, I know. And it was this, put your own oxygen mask on before helping others here. You've got to, you do as you say, self-care is not selfish. It's crucial to your success and sanity. And it impacts how you are with other people. So it's crucially important. Now, you can become self-obsessed. That's another thing. But I think self-care isn't just about benefiting you. It will benefit those around you as well.
And it will increase your impact tenfold, exponentially, if you do that. So it's so critical to do that, especially in this day and age where more and more people feel like they're being pulled in so many different directions and they're not taking care of themselves and making sure that they put that as a priority as well. And also, there's that feeling that I know that I've experienced in the past. A lot of leaders have this, everyone has this, is your past, right? Really enjoy the present. That's been one of the themes throughout this episode. Make it deliberate, make it intentional, enjoy the present moment that you have. Don't focus too much on the future. Use it to inform your decisions on the present to become the type of person you want to be. And then also, your past is not a life sentence, but lessons that if you don't dwell on them can help you to become a better person. You learn from it. But many people, they are in a prison. They're a prisoner of their past and they're not able to break free from it, right?
Yeah, I mean, someone said to me years ago, Paul, if you really knew the kind of person I've been, you wouldn't like me. And I went, oh, well, that's good. That makes two of us then. Because we've done things, we've said things, we've thought things. And, forgiveness is a very, very powerful thing. And it's not an easy thing. It doesn't mean forgetting. But I think sometimes, Charles, we need to forgive ourselves. We are flawed. And recognizing we are all flawed and we may have all failed. And there are times when we're using the F theme. I feel at times I've failed, I'm flawed. And if I'm honest, I've felt at times a fraud. I've been all of those. But I also seriously believe we're also potentially really fantastic. And so I don't ignore the flaws or my struggles. I've learned to acknowledge them, but I've learned to realize you're probably not the only one, Paul, who's had a past and done things and said things that you regret. And if we can make peace with our past, and there's a phrase that goes, you can't go back to the beginning and create that new beginning, but you can start now and create a new ending. And I have to always learn to forgive myself, but also say, but now I am older, I am wiser. And I put that boxing glove, that inner critic to one side and I go, yeah, I know we're all flawed and feel frauds at times. I get that. But again, what you focus on magnifies. And I don't want to keep on, focusing just all purely on my failings. I want to acknowledge them. I accept them. But I also know that I'm learning to forgive myself. And if I've wronged anyone else, asking for their forgiveness and just think about, okay, but what can I do? I can't actually influence and go back. But what I can do is think about what can I do now, today, to make my tomorrow better and the tomorrows of other people better. And, I mean, there's probably lots of different religious faiths talk about that as well. And I know we see religion increasingly as people see it's outdated or it's not relevant. I study them all, and I study ancient philosophy like Stoicism as well. And I think we've got a lot to learn from the ancients, we really have. And maybe one of it is learning to accept ourselves and forgive ourselves and learn to forgive one another.
That brings to mind a quote that I think is really relevant here, that if you don't forgive yourself, or let's rephrase it, if you don't forgive someone else, right, it does more damage and harm to you than it does to them. It's
Mhm.
like stating to them that you want to give them poison, but you're actually drinking it. So,
100%.
so it's such a damaging emotion, of feeling to have that harboring unforgiveness, resentment. Let it go. And you're not doing it for them. You're doing it for yourself so that
Yeah.
you can move on, so that the scars of your past, they remind you of who you are, but it's not where you're going.
Yeah. And I think we can talk about this now, Charles. And obviously, everything we're saying, we're agreeing with each other. I also acknowledge this is not easy. And this is not, just make that decision and let it go. People sometimes need some real support on this. They might need to see a therapist to talk things through. So I'm not in any way trying to just be dismissive. But what I am saying is, I've been on this planet a long time and I've read a lot, but I've lived a lot. And, my new TikTok channel, like the Sumo guy, what we've summed it up in 4 words. What's this TikTok channel about? It's like life advice that works. That's what it's about. Life advice that works, whether that's life at work, with your first life, whether it's life with yourself, life with your kids, your partner, your ex-partner. It's life advice that works. And that's what it's all about. And I'm just going to share some stuff that either from experience or from science. I'm thinking, now this really works. And you're so right. We sometimes harbor resentment, and the only person we're hurting is ourselves because we're the ones that drunk our own poison. And life can make you bitter, but it can also make you better. It's like when you put an egg, and boil up the water, the egg over time gets hard. But if you put a potato in the same water and boil it, it ultimately becomes soft. Now that's just the way the egg and the potato are. Same circumstances, but a different outcome. But we've got a choice. That's maybe what makes us different from the rest of the animal kingdom, that ability to choose. And interestingly enough, SUMO, not as an acronym, but as a word in Latin, means to choose. And a friend of mine says, Paul, every day is a choose day. CHOOSE. And sometimes, Charles, I have to make a choice here because I've had some pretty awful stuff happen to me, particularly in my childhood. So what do I want to do? Hang on to the bitterness or try and use it to make me better? And that isn't easy to just do. You need help, you need to work through things, but it is possible. I really believe it is.
It's so important. Like you said, it's not something to be dismissed. It's something that's difficult for a lot of people to do. And the advice that we've been talking about throughout this episode, simple ways, effective ways, they're proven. And I hope that by talking about these, even though maybe our listeners have heard it many times, maybe today is the day that's one piece of advice makes that difference, right? That they say, you know what, I'm going to let go of this bitterness and resentment. I know I need help. I've struggled with this for too long. I don't want to be a prisoner of my past. I want to move on and have a brighter future. And that's what I'm really hoping for from this type of episode, where we're sharing so much great advice that is common sense, but people still need to hear it again and again. That repetition makes a difference and puts it front and center in their mind. Love to talk about 2 more pieces of advice that really has made an impact on me that I know is going to be valuable for our listeners. One, which we're in this culture, and this culture is so fraught with this of comparing ourselves to others. And I've instilled this into my children. I've tried to make this one of my foundational principles that I practice each and every day. It's never good to compare yourself with someone else. You have 2 different things that are happening when you do. Either you think you're better than that person, which instills arrogance and other undesirable qualities, or you think they're better than you and now you're envious, you're jealous. It's always better to look at yourself and improve over time and see where you have been, because no 2 people are alike. everyone has different gifts, different weaknesses. And to compare an apple to an orange is fruitless, pun intended, just as it is for you to try to compare yourself to someone else. You don't have those experiences. You haven't had that life that they've had. So, can you give us some more insight around this concept, Paul, and how people can get better at not comparing themselves with others?
Yeah, I think we start by actually accepting to some degree we did evolve to want to compare ourselves with others. We learn from others. We role model. A child learns to pick up chopsticks or a knife and fork or a spoon because of what they see people around them do. So there is, on one level, we were almost like we evolved to compare. We get our social cues, if you like, from other people. So there's an acknowledgement that there is healthy comparison. But then, as you say, there does become the unhealthy, which can lead to jealousy and envy. And what I'm learning, though, is one, as I have learned, I remember seeing a friend who posted some beautiful pictures of a partner and her over New Year and her and children. And I saw all these comments. Oh, you look great, Elaine, and oh, and so and so. And I'm like going, the last time I spoke to Elaine, she was telling me some awful things about a marriage. And yet, there's everyone's got a story. And we often, there's a phrase, isn't there, that says we often compare our lives with the edited highlights of someone else. Kim Kardashian recommended that to post the perfect selfie, you may need to take 300 photos. And then after all that time and effort, you see just that photo, and you go, doesn't she look amazing? Or doesn't that guy, or doesn't that look amazing? And and again, the lighting and how much, and you go, flip an heck. So for me, there can be healthy comparisons. So as I mentioned, I've set myself up on TikTok. Well, I have looked at a couple of people who I think are doing a great job with their TikTok and talking about, in a sense, although they don't call it this, but their own life advice that works. And I'm thinking, what can I learn from them? And I compare and contrast my approach and my style. But my comparing leads to creating something that I want to bring to the world. My comparing doesn't lead to me feeling terrible that they've got 4 million TikTok followers and I've got 24. Maybe that comparison could become some kind of inspiration. But when the comparison just turns to envy and jealousy, it becomes incredibly unhealthy. So I'm like to think about healthy comparison that might lead me to create and be an inspiration to me to live my life maybe in a better way, rather than just simply become completely envious and go inward and become almost like self-loathing.
That's a great way to phrase it. And I agree with you too, that there is a healthy comparison, but you have to walk that fine line because it can quickly turn into unhealthy where you get envious, you get jealous, and then you become unhappy as a result because you're not like that individual or you can't attain that. And then going back to what you said earlier, we don't see the whole album of individuals. We just see the images they want us to see, which usually paint a very heavily distorted view of their lives. So social media does that brilliantly, right? It gets you more envious and jealous to say, wow, they're going on trips, they're traveling, they're having a great life. And contrast that with, look at me, I don't do any of that. Which brings me to the point where I have seen this a lot, and I'd love for you to speak to this, is that, it's always better to celebrate other people's successes. I feel that a more fixed, a limited mindset by some people to say, I don't want to celebrate their successes. I'm jealous of them because they feel somehow that by them having that success, then they are less likely to have success as a result of that. Whereas if you have more of a growth mindset, a more expansive mindset to say, you know what, good for them. They've worked their butt off. They have great work ethic, a lot of stuff they've had to overcome. I'm happy. I want to celebrate them. And I know that by no means diminishes what I can do or my success. But in some cases,
It can inspire you. It can inspire you, can't it? I mean, what I've seen with these two TikTokers is, I mean, I don't know them personally. I've reached out to one and he's reached out to me, which is very gracious of him, but I'm inspired And I'm thinking, well, good on you because you've put the work, you've invested in having these filmed. And I'm not in a sense celebrating their success on one level. I'm celebrating the fact that I think lots of people are getting helped by them. But what I can also do is think, what can I learn from what they've done? What can I learn from that person's success that could maybe help me if I'm willing to do what, they've done. So I think social media is going to constantly now because in the past, back to our tribe men and women on the African savannah, that the largest group of people you'd be part of would be 150. And there's probably going to be out the 150, one or two people that you're better at than something else. But now, no matter how good you are at something, you compare yourself now to 7.7 billion other people on the planet. And it's just like, whoa, this is just going to do your head in. And to coin a phrase, Charles, sometimes just shut up and move on, eh? Just get on with life. Enjoy who you are. Celebrate who you are. Work at trying to improve yourself. Leave the world in a better place than you found it. And let other people get on with their lives.
Great advice. I love to just talk about, give our listeners one model before we end this episode. And one of the models that's in the book is the 7C model to thrive. It's used as a tool for both in conversations and as reflection. And by addressing these 7Cs, you can increase your level of satisfaction. And the 7Cs I'll go over briefly. And then if you want to just kind of speak to the model and just give some insight into how people can apply it. So the 7Cs are clarity, competent, confident, comfortable, challenge, cared for, and control.
Yeah, sure. When my wife likes gardening. And when we go to a garden centre, you buy a plant or a bush and it comes with a card. And basically this card is saying, if you want me to thrive and flourish, this is how you've got to treat me. And the thing is, when you meet people, they don't give you a card. And so when I came up with this concept of how can people thrive and flourish in life? How can children thrive and flourish? And some of the things are, give me some clarity. What do you expect of me? So for a child, what are my boundaries? What can I do? What can't I do? As an employee, you don't just say, we put the customer at the heart of all we do. Well, what does that mean? Give me some clarity. Help me to be specific in my behaviors. So clarity is important, but you also need to be competent. It's like, you give me the tools, the training, the technology to do a good job. You build the house, you need the tools to do it. You need the training to know how to operate certain machinery. And yet sometimes with people, we say it's all about your attitude. Well, yeah, your attitude's important, but I need to develop some competence as well. Confidence is crucial. And I think some people have the competence, but lack the confidence. They don't believe in themselves enough. Now, interestingly, there are some people who have the confidence, but lack the competence. And I'm sure we've met people who are like that as well. But there's this thing about what would be on my card? What's going to help me thrive and flourish? I need some clarity. I need to feel competent. I'm good at something. I've got the training, the tools, the technology. I need to feel confident. And another one is I need to feel comfortable. Now, it's in a business context, we would use the phrase psychological safety. I feel I can speak out and I won't be, ridiculed for saying something. In life, we are at our best when we feel comfortable. I've been involved with IMS probably for 10 years. And when I've been involved, I'm comfortable speaking to you. I'm comfortable in a relationship with the chairs around the US, elsewhere. And there is this sense of, I feel comfortable. It's a connection with people as well. And I think sometimes if you feel intimidated at work, if you feel the culture doesn't fit with your values, you're not going to feel comfortable. If you don't feel comfortable to contribute in a meeting, you won't thrive or flourish. So those are just a few of the 7Cs. I'll leave you with one other, which is, do I feel cared for? Do I feel that my company, my boss actually values me as a person, not just as an employee? And do they care for my own development and my own investment? Or do they just want to get the results from me, but not do a lot of investing in me as a human being? So those are just a few of the 7Cs.
Great. I love that model. And I think that's going to help our listeners as well as they try to take some of this advice and use it and apply it. As we end the episode, love to leave them with that piece of advice that I think for me, self-improvement starts out with being a lifelong learner and handling things with humility. And humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking about yourself less. And if you have that mindset, then all these other pieces of advice that we've mentioned and all the advice that you get from whether it's in a professional setting or a personal setting, you're going to be more receptive to, benefit from, employ, and be able to take that feedback. So is there anything around humility that you want to end with, Paul, to help our listeners to be more humble, lifelong learners and have the right attitude?
No, we started like this interview by talking about a quote from Albert Einstein, two ways of looking at life. Nothing's a miracle or everything's a miracle. And if I was to link something back to that, I would just have that spirit of curiosity, the curiosity to appreciate you don't know everything, the curiosity to acknowledge that there could be someone who's quite junior in your organization and you could be quite senior and yet you could learn from them. The curiosity to understand that, yeah, it is a lifelong journey learning. And if I can stay humble and hungry, that will serve me well. I will be well fed if I can have that attitude of staying hungry and humble. And hopefully the fact that people are tuning into this podcast is a reflection that they haven't felt that they've arrived and there's nothing else for them to learn. They are continuing to be humble and hungry. And if you just phrase it in another way, which is, I'm curious about life. And I have that openness to be more curious. Great place to be.
I love those two H's. That's definitely something I'm going to incorporate as well and use. So thank you again, Paul, for joining me. Please remind our listeners of how they can get in contact with you.
If you just put anywhere, basically, the SUMO guy, you will come across me on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok, and my website is thesumoguy.com.
Thank you again, Paul, for joining us. I know our listeners are going to get a lot of value out of this, and I would encourage all of them to share with your friends, share with your colleagues. This advice, it's timeless, it's practical, it's common sense, but it needs to be heard. And this concludes this episode then of the Good Leadership Podcast. If you'd like to subscribe, this podcast can be found both on Apple and Spotify and can also be accessed on the Institute for Management Studies website at ims-online.com. And until next time, remember, it's not what you know, but what you do consistently that makes a difference.